Hello and welcome to another episode of Trojan Dash. I'm joined once again by Nathan Ackerman, and as always, I'm Sam Arslanian. Nathan, how are you doing?
As Pac-12 games across the conference have been canceled this year, I've sort of wondered what our fellow Dash co-hosts from other schools do when there are no games to talk about.
Yep, USC had its first one taken away by COVID this past weekend, but nonetheless, it was a very eventful week in college football as a whole, and especially the Pac-12. A lot of great Pac-12 games. You had Stanford and Cal nail biter. Stanford coming out on top, 24-23. Colorado rescheduled against San Diego State, beat them by 10. Utah and Washington was a great game. Washington just coming out on top, 24-21, and now Washington's ranked 23. So there you go. And then Arizona and UCLA. UCLA took it to Arizona as we all expected. And the one we didn't expect, that maybe no one expected. Pac-12 after dark, anything can happen. What were they at the time? Number 9, Oregon, losing. Number 9 in the AP poll, number 15 in the college football playoffs rankings. Lost to Oregon State, 41-38. Didn't see that one coming.
Hey, I want to shout out the Beavs for getting a vote in this week's AP poll. They come in at number 35 with one vote for the top 25.
Woo.
I think the Beavs got a little slept on. So proud of the Beavs. Happy.
Hey man, the Beavs look good. I'm gonna say Jamar Jefferson looks like a baller. Sucks that Jebbia got hurt on that second to last play there. The second to last play of that drive when they scored. Jebbia looks good. Jamar Jefferson looks good. The Beavs look good, man. I wouldn't be surprised if they do some things to shake up the North a little bit more. But at this point, does it really matter? I feel like you got two teams that are in the running for it, and it's basically Oregon or Washington at this point. And we'll see what it comes down to. But I want to talk about who the best team in the Pac-12 is right now. The way I see it, and I'm going to start because I'm hosting today. I see 3 teams. Okay. And I don't think really any team is deserving of it right now. I see Oregon, I see USC, and I see Washington. Oregon just lost to Oregon State. I don't know how you say they're the best team in the Pac-12 after that. Despite the fact that they are still Oregon. But I want to see them play. I want to see that Washington game bad. I am excited for that game. USC is kind of the same thing, except they've won every game, right? So you have a USC team who's 3-0. They've played Utah, who got off to a slow start. They looked a lot better this past week against Washington. So, same thing with USC. USC got out to a slow start, so did Utah. The difference is USC just had 2 games before they played Utah, and Utah had their first game against USC. And then you have Washington, who looks solid, but I still want to see a little bit more down the road. If I'm remembering correctly, they played a couple tight games earlier this season, right? I mean,
they were close with Oregon State.
They were close with Oregon State, yeah. So I mean, yeah, and they beat Arizona, and then obviously that close Utah game. So really, I don't know that there's a clear-cut winner, and I think it's a toss-up between USC and Washington. And yeah. I think that's just because we don't know enough. I think USC has the potential to be the best team in the Pac-12. I also think Washington does. Oregon is kind of out of the conversation unless they come back and rebound and just pound Washington when they play in the last week before the championship. But Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Well, okay, so Oregon's definitely out of the conversation. Through the first couple weeks, Oregon, they were number 15 in the CFP, number 10, number 9, top 10 in the AP. But I mean, their defense has just looked bad all year. They allowed, I think, 14 points to Stanford, which is fine. But then they allowed 29 to Washington State, 35 to UCLA, or 38, 35, I think, to UCLA. And then they just allowed 41 to Oregon State. So I've needed to see more from Oregon this year, and I think the loss of Oregon State pretty much takes them out of the conversation for best team in the Pac-12 right now, of course. Things could totally change. Washington, to me, I was slow to buy in because I put a lot of stock into that first game against Oregon State when it was close toward the end. I think they won by, I think it was within one possession. I think they maybe started to pull away late, but and they were in control of that game pretty late. But I think it was still within one score. And Oregon State might have actually won that game if it weren't for a few bad spots within the 10-yard line, and they're probably going to take the lead by that. So I was kind of hesitant to buy in on Washington, and then they destroyed Arizona, which it's Arizona, sure, but they still had a 37-0 lead at some point, and that's impressive against pretty much any team. So then I was like, okay, Washington's pretty solid. And then I was kind of, part of me was rooting for the Utes to pretty much stomp Washington so that SC could clearly emerge as the best team in the Pac-12. And in the first half, when it was 21-0, I was like, okay, I've been proven right, or at least USC has been proven right. And then in the second half, it was an entirely different ballgame. They won 24-0 in the second half to come out with a 24-21 victory. And so I'm chalking that first half up to kind of a fluke. And then in hindsight, now that we know that Oregon State is actually kind of decent, the first game doesn't look so bad. I mean, they won it, but the fact that it was close doesn't look that bad. So right now, I'd say I've seen more out of Washington than USC, definitely more out of Washington than Oregon. So right now, I would give Washington the slight nod. You know me as the guy that's going to take USC over pretty much any team in the country. I would probably, you probably think I'd take USC over Alabama, which is possible, but for now, I'm going to take.
Oh my God!
For now, I'm going to say Washington right now has looked the best in the Pac-12. I think things are going to change. Prediction time, I think USC is going to win the Pac-12 championship. So again, that could also change. But right now, it's hard to give. And I think USC should probably be ranked higher too, because I think that they're a better team. But as far as who looked better early on in the season, you got to get it wrong.
I think the other interesting thing to say is that going into that Pac-12 championship, we're going to know who the favorite is from the end of the season, right? If it's Oregon that gets in there, it's going to be the South team, USC. If it's Washington that ends up cleaning up and they put a win over Oregon, I think it's going to be Washington. I don't really see any way that Oregon goes into this as the favorite. So I'm going to give Washington the slight edge right now as the favorite in the Pac-12. But do I think USC can beat them? Absolutely. Do I think USC can beat Oregon? Absolutely. Do I think Washington and Oregon can both beat USC? Absolutely. I don't think I think you got three teams that you got to worry about. Now, the other thing is, can USC get spoiled, right? You got an undefeated team in Colorado, and we'll talk about that cancellation later, and how much it comes into play, really. But you have Wazoo. Wazoo's familiar to playing spoiler. You look back at 2017, week 3 or 4 or something like that. That was going to be a year. Sam Darnold's last year. Wazoo plays spoiler in Pullman. Now, granted, this game's not in Pullman, and USC doesn't have to play in 20-degree weather, which they do not like doing very often. But I still think Washington State and UCLA are going to be 2 tough games for USC down the road. It's hard to say that because you want to say USC is a good team. They're going to be able to handle these 2 teams that are less than them, right? But it's USC, and we've seen what they're capable of doing in terms of almost blowing games. Granted, they haven't blown any games yet, but you should be beating Arizona by a couple more points than you did, right?
Yeah. I mean, you love to dwell on the fact that Washington State spoiled USC's season in 2017. But let's not forget about my, I think, freshman year, 2018, when Washington State was very good. They were top 10. I think they only had 1 loss all season, maybe 2, and one of those losses came on a Jay Tufele blocked field goal.
Which they were going to lose. You can't. Nathan, you
but
can't rely on.
Season.
I know, but you can't rely on a blocked field goal to beat teams, especially if you're talking about being that team, right? You can't rely on that. You got to be able to convincingly put these teams away early.
I mean, tell that to Stanford, right? They blocked two kicks against Cal. If one of those goes through, they probably.
Yeah.
Block kicks are part of the game, man.
I know they're a part of the game, but I mean, did USC deserve to win that game?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad we agree on this. Yeah, I feel like you get really hyped up about things and we start talking through things and you come back down to earth a little bit more.
Hey, I'm just trying to be the eternal optimist that I am.
Oh, I know you are. Believe me.
Kind of my
I'll be the pessimist here. Okay, let's move on to topic 2. What does the Colorado cancellation mean? So USC had its first game canceled, and we'll talk about the national picture as a whole in terms of, is there even a shot that USC can make the CFP? The answer is basically no. Nathan has a theory, but it's a long shot. We'll get to that.
Yeah, even I'm willing to admit that it's a long shot, but it is a theory that I'm going to throw out there.
What I'm saying, this Colorado cancellation means USC fans, you got to be content with a Pac-12 championship and a Fiesta Bowl. That's what you got to be content with at this point. The CFP is out of the range. USC is the favorite in the South to make it to the Pac-12 championship. Jason's in chat saying it's not going to happen. I'm assuming he means CFP or something. It's not going to happen. We agree here. It's not going to happen. I don't think any Pac-12 team has a shot anymore. I mean, Oregon. You needed Oregon. What you needed was Oregon and USC to meet 6-0 in the college football or into the Pac-12 championship in order to even have a shot. And even then, it was still not a guarantee, right? But USC is the favorite in the South. Not playing Colorado, it definitely sucks for USC. You want to be the guy that says, "Hey, we beat every team in the South. We're the clear contender." Whereas, Colorado's correct me if I'm wrong, they're the only undefeated team in the South. Yeah, besides USC at 2-0. Granted, those wins are over UCLA, who does look good, and Stanford, who looks a little bit less good than UCLA. Close games, but solid wins nonetheless. And they put away a San Diego State team. I want to see if they can pound on Arizona this weekend. That'll be something to kind of look forward to. And then that Utah game, that's going to be a really interesting game too, especially if Utah's kicking into high gear like we've been seeing. But the way I see this is USC fans, CFP is not happening anymore. You got to be content with a Fiesta Bowl, which is the substitute for the Rose Bowl this year because it's the semifinal for the playoff. I still don't know why they do it. I think it's the dumbest thing ever. USC gets the golden spoon to the South, and when you're the best team in the South, you generally get a path to the championship. Jason, that's how this works. I'm sorry that you guys didn't have a chance to play us, but you're not the better team in the South this year. I don't know. They're good. You're good. Don't get me wrong, Nathan. What does this cancellation mean to you?
Yeah, I think you're right that it means USC fans need to be with the Fiesta because here we go. I'll say it. Playoffs not going to happen. But you're also right that they need to get the Rose Bowl out of the College World Playoff. But yeah, I mean, okay. Given everything that's happened this year, given that I think we both can agree that this season as a whole is a total joke, and it's not just because USC has one game canceled, it's that it's happening all across the country to some of the best teams. You have a team like Ohio State that might be 5-0 get in the playoff. We'll talk about that later, whatever. This season's a total joke. The USC's ceiling, really, assuming that the Pac-12 was, wow, the chat is blown up. Assuming that the college football playoff was out of the picture, especially considering that USC was only going to play 7 games tops, the next best thing was the Fiesta Bowl. So, I mean, there's no really other New Year's Six Bowl that USC or that a Pac-12 team could really gone to that's really better than that game, given that the Rose Bowl is part of the playoff. So, yeah, I think, look, you get a Fiesta Bowl matchup against a team like Northwestern, Indiana, like that'd be a great game. And I think that'd be an awesome game. And I think it would be also a great way for USC to really test where this team is at. Because the end of the season is going to have some big long-term implications on the future direction of the program. And of course, I'm talking about Coach Helton. And I think if they were to go up against a team like Northwestern, who's on the rise but not really elite quite yet, we saw that they lost to Michigan State this weekend. And they totally blow out SC, and USC just looks overmatched, then we know that this ship is really not going in the right direction. So, it'll be a great litmus test, I guess, to see where this team's really at. But yeah, it means that the slim chances of the playoff are gone, pretty much, except for my third theory. And it means that, look, a Pac-12 championship is going to be a successful season. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think winning the Pac-12 championship is a successful season.
Oh, yeah.
Well, also, here's the other thing. I want to get to Jason's question real quick before I go on my tangent about what this game actually could mean. He says, I would like you all to at least recognize that CU is the fourth best team in the Pac-12. Do you agree with that?
Washington, I think Oregon's still better. I mean, Oregon's definitely still better. USC is better. And I like the way that UCLA is playing right now. I know the record is 1-2, and Colorado's 3-0. And I also lost to Colorado. Colorado beat UCLA, so I guess you have to give Colorado a nod. This is the first game for both teams. Okay, Colorado's the fourth best team.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, congratulations.
We're agreeing with you, Jason. Okay, I want to move on to this. I grew up a Big Ten fan. I grew up a Michigan fan. I'm from Michigan. I'm actually back home right now. So I have been dying and dying to see a Rose Bowl. I've been dying, or whatever you want to call it. Pac-12 first Big. Wanted it every year I've been in college, and I got it my first year. It was a Cotton Bowl at AT&T Stadium, and we got destroyed by Ohio State. Who, to make matters worse, my cousin attends Ohio State too. So that was awful. But here's the thing. There's two teams that USC is going to play if they win the Pac-12 championship. Okay, they're going to play Indiana, or they're going to play Northwestern. And the only way they can play Indiana is if Ohio State gets a game canceled. And they're not eligible for the conference championship, which I think you said in order to do that, even if they missed a game, 11 of 14 remaining games have to be to lower the threshold enough. So if Ohio State misses one game, they have Michigan State and Michigan. And, they had a bad COVID outbreak this past week, and we've seen it where games get canceled 2 weeks in a row with like really bad outbreaks like that. So it's not the furthest conclusion. Would I like to see Indiana? Yeah. Would I like to see Northwestern? Absolutely. But I think the more likely chance is Northwestern. And I think that plays in USC's favor a little bit in that Fiesta Bowl, because you look at Indiana, and Indiana looks great. Northwestern looks great too, but Northwestern just lost to Michigan. So I'm gonna knock a point off for that. Indiana played Ohio State great, like they really did. And the other thing is they have USC's kryptonite, right? They got a running quarterback, and they got a really good running quarterback. I mean, Michael Penix Jr. is, I don't know why he's not higher up on Heisman watch list, or even, I don't even know if he's even on one. I haven't heard anyone talk about him in the national spotlight. This dude's awesome. He is a baller, and that would hurt USC. So I think Northwestern, USC fans want that more than Indiana, but I'm excited to see this. I really hope USC does it. I think they have a very solid shot. I think that's the ceiling, and I think if you're Clay Helton, that is where you guys need to at least a berth into that game. You got to win the Pac-12 championship. You are right now the favorite to do it. I still think they're the favorite. Even if Washington is, maybe looking like the better team right now, I still think USC is the favorite team to win this. You have to make it there. You have to win out, and you have to win that game. You have two games that you should win on this schedule. You're going to go in there 6-0. There's a very solid chance that Washington drops to Oregon. You could be the only undefeated team in the Pac-12 besides Colorado, whatever. But you are the best team in the South, and you have a better record than everyone else in the North. I think I think USC is the favorite. I think that is where they need to be. I think it's a bad season for Clay Helton if he doesn't get there. I know there's a lot of other factors at play, and I don't think the CF, obviously he can't make the college football playoffs, and that's not his fault. Now, if another game gets canceled, like we've seen time and time again, like this Washington State game gets canceled, that's going to hurt USC a lot for the Pac-12 championship and making it there. And then, again, it's out of Clay Helton's hands, which fans never like to hear because they always want to blame Clay Helton for whatever it is he does. But all in all, the season is good right now. It sucks that you get a game canceled, but USC is known to start slow. They started slow. They got the wins. They have that really nice win over Utah. Granted, Utah started slow. They didn't look too great against USC, but I think USC did a little bit to actually make them not look that good, right? I think USC really came into its own. You saw Keenan Christian going out there. You saw the linebackers. You saw the defensive line, the offensive line. They all looked better in that game. And maybe it's because it's less good competition, but they're not worse than Arizona, and they were bad against Arizona. So something's going right for them now, right? They're going up on that upward trend. I wish Emil was here because he keeps saying they're going to peak at the right time. They're peaking right now. They're going up. But yeah, that's what USC has to do. I'm gonna be upset with Clay Helton if they don't make it to that point.
Well, how much do you buy the whole? It's with COVID and everything going on, you can't really use this as an actual assessment of this team, because where I come from is that people thought that was going to happen in the NBA, the MLB, right? People thought that owners, GMs, whatever might say, this is a weird season, it's unlike any other, it's a short schedule, so we don't really know if we can jump to any conclusions based on, but that didn't happen, right? Guys got fired, guys lost their jobs, trades were made, whatever. Like they made decisions because everybody else is facing the same situations too, and it's hit a lot of teams harder than it's hit USC. So I think if they try to take this and maybe USC doesn't win the Pac-12 championship, or they lose like one game and they still do, but they probably shouldn't have lost that game. They might try to pull the whole, this is a weird season. But I think in the end, what they're going to say is that USC is not where they need to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing. Here's where I see the grace. One, USC is very lenient with Clay Helton, and a lot of that has to do because of the university's financials. USC is destroyed financially right now. Not only does the pandemic hurt them, but they're also paying out the George Tyndall stuff. They're dealing with the college admissions scandal, all of these other things. I mean, every university is financially destroyed right now. Pandemic, right? You lose out on housing. That is a huge amount of income. You lose out on football sales, whether that's apparel, tickets, whatever it is at the game. Right, that's a lot of money. All these colleges are hurting. Where the NBA or the NHL and whatever, they have a little bit more money in their pockets, right? This is also a professional thing. You're dealing with students here. And this isn't the case necessarily for USC, right? They only had one player opt out, but a lot of universities had a lot of players opt out. Oregon star player, Penei Sewell, opted out, right? So is Mario Cristobal's job in jeopardy because they lost to Oregon State? No, right? I think he's fine there. I think all these coaches are pretty secure. And I don't think USC is gonna pull the plug. If they didn't pull the plug after the last few years, especially they're installing a new defense, right? I'm gonna go 3 years in a row. No way Clay Helton gets fired. I'll let you know if it changes later, but I'm gonna go 3 years in a row, okay? And I haven't been wrong yet. So yes, you can buy cardboard cutouts. So maybe we could support USC financially so they can finally get rid of Clay Helton by buying cardboard cutouts. I'm gonna fill the whole stadium with them.
Look, I think if it looks bad enough, they're gonna pull. I get that there's a lot of financial incentive there, but I don't know if USC is really pinching pennies. I don't know if this is the school that's like really should be fun. So we'll see. I think it might take a couple losses for them to actually make that move. But I think if it looks bad enough, they're going to realize that this is USC's window too, because they're kind of loaded. Like the roster's really good, and if they can't get it done now, if they continue to look, or if they start looking bad like they did against Arizona, if they have to lose games this time, I don't know.
Yeah, Spencer's in the chat saying hilarious that a CU fan wants it to be admitted that their team is fourth best. Hey, when you're 0-14 against USC, I think you're going to take fourth best in the Pac-12. Yeah. Let's move on to our last question. It's the same for the past 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know what we're on now. Where does USC stand in the national picture? They're not good.
I'll take the floor here. I'll take the floor.
Okay,
here.
Nathan. Can I prop you up here? Can I prop you up?
Yeah.
Prior to the show, we spent about 45 minutes on the phone where Nathan took about 40 of those minutes walking me through every possibility that USC could make the college football playoffs. I struck down about 11 of them. Here is number 12, which is still barely possible. Like, I'm talking 0.00001%. Like, it is more likely that lightning will strike the Coliseum and light the torch than this happening. Nathan, take it away.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna preface this by agreeing with you. I really do not think that this is going to happen. However, if you examine the individual steps here, you'll find that each of them, well, it's maybe not likely. Each of them there's certainly a chance of them taking place. All right. So let me break this down for you. First step. Notre Dame beats Clemson. Clemson's out. Right. 2-loss Clemson. They lost to Notre Dame. They got to be out. Next step, Ohio State is ineligible for the Big Ten Championship, which means that one of their last 2 games gets canceled, which certainly could happen because I've seen very few of these COVID cancellation outbreaks, whatever, only canceling 1 game. So I think there's a chance that happens. In that case, it's hard to put a 5-0 Ohio State in the playoffs, right? Especially when they don't even appear in the conference championship game, right? Cincinnati loses to Tulsa. They play toward the end of the season. I think there's a conference championship there too. So they're going to play them twice. If they lose one of those games, they're going to be out. BYU, Spencer, I know you are a BYU fan. I think BYU is better than USC, of course, but the playoff committee clearly does not like them. Like number 14 in the first list was very disrespectful, I thought. I know that's a lot coming from me, but whatever. So now you have now you have, and then BYU doesn't schedule Washington, or they schedule that game and they lose, right? So now you have BYU out, you have Cincinnati out, you have Clemson out, you have Ohio State out, and then the teams that you are left with are Notre Dame and Texas A&M. Probably gets that nod. Alabama, obviously, SEC champion, undefeated, best team in the country, and then there's a fourth spot, which can't be BYU, can't be Cincinnati. Can't be Ohio State because they didn't play enough games. If you have a 6-0 SC who won a conference championship, look, it's possible.
I still think Indiana takes it if Ohio State is ineligible, right? Indiana gets that spot.
No. That's actually a great point. Because
you mean Northwest? You forgot Northwestern.
So Northwestern has to beat Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, but not convincingly enough to put them in the playoff. Unconvincingly enough to the point where they say they lost to Michigan State, and the way in which they beat Indiana was not convincing enough to put them in. And your four teams are Alabama, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, SC.
Just so we don't get dragged on Twitter, because apparently we have some BYU fans in the chat, and I know what BYU is capable of. That's not going to happen.
It's not.
And if it does happen, USC is going to play Alabama, and they're going to get dragged. Okay? So I'm not saying it's possible. It's possible. But so is a chance of me winning the Mega Millions. Okay? They're possible. Not plausible. This USC team hasn't shown enough to show that they can compete with Alabama. And by God, I'm glad they did not play them at the start of the season, because that would have been college football playoff hopes gone. Week 1, done. Done. That's it. I retire. I don't cover college football anymore. I go into hiding, and I call it that because I thought they had a shot against Alabama. And it's clear if they started like they did against Arizona State, they don't. We got Lily in the chat saying there's what are the chances of a global pandemic happening? And yet it still happened, didn't it? So, yeah. Spencer saying you guys beat Utah. I'm a fan. Dude, I want to see Utah BYU. That could be awesome.
Yeah, me too.
Give me that. Spencer, I'm glad you're joining our side now. I appreciate it. I'm glad we can be friends after this. I'm sorry for what we said against BYU, and the CFP is definitely snubbing BYU a little bit.
What I said. Sorry for what I said.
I backed you up a little bit. But here's what I want to say about the national pick, okay? Everything is destroyed right now. Whoever wins the season, barring Alabama, because Alabama is the one team that you can confidently say is the best team in this league, right? There's a reason they're at number 1, and I don't see that moving anytime soon. Okay, you know how many votes they have? 1,550. Okay, they got 62 first place votes, which is all of them.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no one on the there's 62 people that vote for the AP poll, and not one of them thinks they don't deserve to be there. So I think unless it's Alabama, there's an asterisk. Just because you even have a Notre Dame team that's playing, in the ACC, which is just not normal. You have Ohio State who's playing fewer games. Nothing makes sense this year. It really doesn't. I think everything is going to have an asterisk by it. I think at this point we're just playing for fun, and that's why I don't care about the CFP anymore, just because it's not USC's fault. Now, if they lose to Washington State or UCLA at the end of the season, I'm going to be kind of mad. I'm going to be kind of ticked. But at this point, it's not their fault. You can't blame Clay Helton. You can't blame Todd Orlando. You can't blame Graham Harrell or Keaton Slovis or the linebackers or injuries. Somehow we lose Marquise Stepan Carr already. But, I don't think it's anyone's fault.
We were talking about this before the show. But there's a tiny piece of me. Not significant enough, not a big enough piece. But there's a tiny piece of me that says, look, if USC loses one game, then we won't be left reminiscing on what could have been. Because if USC goes undefeated this year, you know what we're all going to do, or I know what I'm going to do, and say, oh, well, they went 6-0. They would have clearly won 12-0. They might have even beaten Alabama. They'd be in the college football playoff for sure. But if USC loses to, like, UCLA or Washington State, or even in the Pac-12 championship, we're going to say, look, maybe you go to the Fiesta Bowl, and nothing else could have happened. And so, therefore, we don't really know what was taken away from us, and we don't have to dwell on what could have been.
You haven't been seasoned because you didn't cover 2018, okay? I covered 2018. I saw what terrible looked like. So, I mean, they got to win out. They just have to. That's the bar for them. At least make the Pac-12 championship. That is the bottom bar. If you don't make the Pac-12 championship, that's grounds for firing. That's the one thing. But we got to wrap it up. We're at 3:30 Pacific time. It's 6:30 here where I am right now. I'm getting kind of tired. I've been up early. But we're going to wrap this up. Nathan, thank you for laying everything out for us, giving us your optimism. And once again, apologizing to BYU fans everywhere. Nathan, thank you. As always, you can find us on the web at dashsports.tv. You can find us on social at dashsports.tv, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, YouTube. We're there too. Subscribe to us. And we publish columns exclusive with Sports Pac-12. Nathan's got one going up in a couple days, so make sure you check that out. You can find them at sportspac12.com on the web or on social at sportspac12. Once again, this has been Trojan Dash. I'm Sam Arslanian for Nathan Ackerman signing off. We'll see you next week. Before the game, we got a crossover with Wazoo. Cody and Ryan will be joining Nathan. One of them will be joining Nathan, so make sure you tune into that. And as always, you can catch Trojan Dash at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sundays after the game. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for commenting. We love you all, and we will see you next week.